Very much, Shamas. I think I just want to make a follow-up on the last question from Honorable Sangon. This issue about the so-called Zulu war. When I heard about it, my impression was that maybe it might also be a reference to Mkhwanazi and Sbiya, because I thought Sbiya can also be somebody from KZN or who's a Zulu or something like that. But you are raising another version of it. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, well, my belief was that perhaps it's amongst the people that are talking about the Zulu war, because although Sbiya being the Zulu, but is not necessarily from KZN. It is that which I thought politically between the two heads, a head and a former head of this institution, that are perceived to be in loggerheads, that seems to be suggesting that there is issues that are happening in here. And what is worse is that the two individuals that are seen in the police that have been thrown into this is myself and General Khumalo, who are both from KZN. That seems to suggest something like that. But yeah, those are the things that I think about. It might be.
I just want to take you back a bit to the comment you made about, and maybe I know you have somehow commented on this issue. You do not have to go into detail. The migration of people from the police to IDAC and the impact that has had in relation to the work of IDAC and probably the relationship between the police and IDAC. In your knowledge, the people who left the police to become employees of IDAC, were some of them already engaged in some kind of a fight of one form or another with their former colleagues or with their colleagues before they departed from police to IDAC, which could have therefore sustained that and maybe heighten it by the fact that they are now at IDAC, some kind of a watchdog of some sort towards the police, and therefore might be exploiting that authority in furtherance of their own differences with their former colleagues.
Well, I'm not quite sure exactly about the people that have moved from the police to IDAC and the beef they had with the police, except I have heard of some talks about one member at IDAC with Gerald Pahlane, because it looks like at one stage they were all working, I don't know if at forensic, but the other one was at the Eastern Cape, Pahlane was at the head office. But there were always issues that I heard about that involves, but to what extent, I never really investigated. But that is the only person that I know to having had issues. The other one that is with IDAC is the one that is an investigating officer on Gerald Khumalo and his team. That's Padayache. Padayache is an ex-crime intelligence member with a lot of controversial things within, including the illegal listening of Gerald Cele back in the days when he was still a general in the police, when he was still a national commissioner. Illegal interception of his phone, mispresentation to the judge. But that Padayache left the police until he retired. And then he resurfaces at IDAC. And his interest or his involvement in this is focused on intelligence. That's why he's a lead investigator on people at intelligence. The court says, if you want something at crime intelligence, go via Padayache. So he's the only person, but whether he had any beef with anyone, I don't know. But I know that perhaps he still wants the control of the things that he had control over before he retired. And I know of the members of IPID that left IPID and went to IDAC. Whether some of those were in the police before, I do not know. Whether some of those were involved on issues against the police or investigation against the police, that is a fact that they moved with case dockets from IPID to IDAC. And they continued with those investigations at IDAC, which is supposed to be an IP docket, but it landed at IDAC. So maybe if we do an audit of the dockets at IDAC, and then they must explain to you how those dockets got there, whether did they follow the law, are they part of what the IDAC is established for, you'll be able to get evidence.
You know, when we had Mr. O'Sullivan, as you would have noticed, very, very flamboyant, very colorful in terms of what he says and how he put it. But one of the things that he said, which as I listened to him, I said, when we see you, I'm going to pose that question to you, was that at some point you took over a particular company, which he says was owned by a dubious character, which in his own view, somebody at your level of leadership in the police would have known about and possibly avoid a possibility of taking over a company from a previous owner of that caliber. So, and I think from judging from what he was saying, he wanted to make an insinuation about the extent to which you are either reckless, if that is true in terms of what happened with that company, or you acquired that company from a character you knew is not a good character, but nevertheless you proceeded, because it may very well be that you have some link with that kind of a character. So I thought when we see you, we must ask you to comment on that issue, because it is obviously worrying if it's anything to go by.
Yeah, well, I listened to Mr. Paul O'Sullivan. I think, honorable members, what you should be worried about is why will Paul O'Sullivan come and talk about the private things that are involving police officers? He went and he did a dig on information about all of us. That's why he could tell the National Commission owns this property and that property and that property. He went to dig things about me. The only thing that he found that maybe he thought, okay, well, maybe this is questionable, was that company. So how did he get to go to that extent to finding information? What is it about? What gives him the right to do that? This is what I expect these parliamentarians to take action against, because that means the systems that are supposed to be protecting individuals out there from their privacy is not working. If a person can do that and he comes and sits in this parliament and he displays that he has done it and he walks out here without being held accountable, that's a concern, because the private is invaded. Here I am left with today's the 18th of March. 12 days time, my contract ends. I knew that back in 2021 when I took that contract, that is going to end of this March. So in my effort to try and prepare for an exit in the organization, on what do, I engage with accountants that are advising me on what I should do next. So one of the advice that perhaps I must consider buying a company, chef company, that can help me to set up opportunities going forward. So it's one of the companies they recommended to me when they did some research to establish, and there's one of the company that's on a shelf company dealing with trade and investment that I must consider looking at. So I then take over that company, I buy it off. I don't see anything wrong on the character of the person, because I never really went into an investigation that Paul O'Sullivan did. So I buy the company, I don't even know the person. So it's a shelf company that gets acquired, and I pay for it, and the membership, the directorship is changed. And I don't even use it, because the company I'm trying to get for the future, try to set up something for the future. But then I felt, no, well, I don't think I'll be able to use this company now. So I closed it. After closing, Mr. Paul O'Sullivan went to dig, what do I have? He discovered that I once owned this company. That's why he came to you, and he spoke about a company that I've already closed. And I had bought it, but I then since closed it. I didn't close it because there were some dubious things on it. I closed it because I felt that there's no need for me to have it. So that was the reason. So what he came and he presented here is not true, and there's no criminal activities that I'm associated with the company. But again, I want to ask you to investigate what gave him authority to do that. And how did he acquire that information? Because if it's not taken to task with it, it's going to be abused, and I believe it has already.
No, General, I can give you an assurance that the conduct of Mr. O'Sullivan, who for whatever reasons immerse themselves into the police service, and do so to a very large extent in a negative way, in a way that either creates or sustains existing problems. So I do want to give you an assurance that when we wrap up our work, it's inevitable that we must have an opinion about such characters and what needs to be done legislatively to protect that environment from possible abuse by characters such as those ones. But I mean, be that as it may, I would imagine that if you had not changed your mind, you kept the company and you proceeded with it, and you discovered this information later on, you were obviously going to be worried about it if there is legitimacy to it, and probably you were going to have to change your mind and look for another company, I suppose.
That's correct.
Okay. Somewhere I read that, I can't remember on which of the papers before us, affidavits or submissions that were made, that at some point you presided over an inquiry which was dealing with some matters of discipline. Would have been the same, could be the same if you were dealing with him today, or there may be other factors that influence the facts that appeared before that committee, which resulted in that particular conclusion.
I would have done the same. In a matter of fact, before I went for that hearing, there were already negative stories out in the media as a result of me presiding over his case. And I already knew that he is involved in one way or another on the wrong that led in such, which he came to apologize to me about whatever that came out after I acquitted him. And I still told him that I don't want to be part of that. We're here dealing with a case that was put before you, and the evidence that was presented, he did not do anything wrong. I gave him credit. I even said he should have been applauded by the organization for what he did.
You know, General, some of us were very worried when Mr. Nkabinde was very casual about your trip to Richards Bay or Mpange, that site.
Yes.
We're very worried about that level of casualty on his part. And when you are saying today, the evidence at your disposal, beside the information, the knowledge you have, because we're part of this, is that, and that can even be corroborated by a tracker information. I wanted to ask the question, would you be comfortable to share that information with the Ad Hoc Committee? Because I think it's, well, maybe if it's not the Ad Hoc Committee, if for some reasons it may be a problem with the Ad Hoc Committee, it could be another committee that deals with sensitive matters. You know, the reason why I'm raising that matter is because your intervention in this regard completely changes the storyline that we were led into by Mr. Nkabinde. Because now the trip, according to you, is right from point A to point B, as opposed to point A, point B, point C. Because he's the way he narrated the story and your journey. I mean, when he uses the term a boy's trip, it has certain connotations, which I'm sure you understand. So that's why I'm asking the question, in order to consolidate the evidence we are putting before us in challenging his assertion, would you be comfortable that that information become accessible?
I remember, I am a citizen in this country, and I know that information can be private, but some information is public. You only need to take an ID number of a person to punch it, and you get all the profile of the things that the person owns. So a vehicle is one of those. For me to hide and say I cannot give this committee the details of that vehicle would be wrong. For transparency, I'll hand over. It is not my car, I must disclose that. It's my wife's car. She controls the tracker. I've asked her to throw me the track, and she went and threw the track and she gave it to me. So you can have it. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think she will have a problem in sharing that either. But the tracker will show you that we left the address that Mkhwanazi put on his statement on that particular date, and we stopped at Mr. Mkhwanazi's residence at Mpangi. We switched off, we went in, we drank coffee, we ate cookies. We greet each other, friendly talk, back into the car. We drove from there, we stopped in Durban. I was a driver.
No, I think, Chair, I'm raising that matter because I do remember you said the tracker is from a vehicle of your wife, and she is not before us. So we can only rely on you to engage with her to agree for that information to be made available. And I was asking precisely because I know things relating to tracker and all of that will somehow involve identity information of an individual involved. But if you say it can be made available, I think we'll appreciate that because it addresses a particular issue with regard to the purpose of the trip from Durban to northern Durban. I think the next issue I wanted to just to verify it has to do with at some point I remember you were inviting Sbia to come to the awards in KZN. And you know, sometimes because we are talking to you as police officers, one of the things that one has learned is that it's not everything that happens which is as we see it. Some of the things are happening not in a way that ordinary people, civilians like ourselves, who are not police officers, who are not trained there, will understand in the way in which, and I will tell you why I'm making this point when I'm asking the question subsequent to this one. But your invitation of SBA to attend the awards, was it just an invitation?
You talk about the police awards?
Yes.
I did not invite him. It's national awards that were held in Durban.
Oh, it was national awards. So he was going to be attending because it's part of the national program.
Yeah. I invited the entire management and the police chiefs to an excursion that I was organizing. So he joined the excursion that I was hosting. But he was there for the Excellence Awards, that is a national event. I did not invite him on that one.
Okay.
I'm not sure, maybe he said I invited him for Durban July either, because I spoke to him before Durban July, before the July 6th.
No, I don't remember him saying that. And then the meeting with Sinon, General Sinon, and Major General.
I'm going to invite this commission, this Ad Hoc Committee, to start getting used to using the constitutional titles.
Okay.
So that you don't get confused much about this general's rank. Say the commissioner's not.
Commissioner. Okay. But that meeting with Mr. Sinon, I think it's even safe to say Mr. Sinon and Mr. Matala. I can't remember who said to us that meeting was in one of the units at the Pearls Hotel, and that person was making a conclusion on the basis of how easy it was to access whatever that was available in that room for consumption. And the conclusion was to the extent that, no, this is Mkhwanazi's a flat or apartment. I don't know if you have commented on that since you are back with us today.
Yeah, yes, I did speak early this morning, and I tried to describe the size of that apartment, the living room, between the dining room where we were seated, the lounge where the TV is with only one couch, that's how small it is, and the kitchen, a small kitchen that is there. So I did explain to the members that if from one point to another in that room, it will not be more than 5 meters. That's how small it is, and in one bedroom. So if somebody were to say, if Nona said, at times I will go to the bedroom, then he will have an excuse of saying he didn't hear what we were talking about. But if he claims that he had gone to the fridge to get something to drink, The fridge was literally less than 2 meters from the table where we seated. If he goes to the fridge, he did not go to the fridge. I'm just saying if he did, but he did not go there. There was no alcohol drank on the day.
It was only water.
I think it was water and some juice there.
Okay.
There's no alcohol that was drank on the day.
That issue of, I think one of my colleagues was raising this question with you earlier on, and I want to take it slightly further. Is it Tibeti or Matibeti, the person?
Matibeti.
Matibeti. The party that I want to ask you to comment on generally is the one that, because I think you had said earlier on, after the quarrel between you and him and the court challenges or proceedings that have taken place, you started getting some people from or who are associated with this company raising all sorts of things about the way in which business is being conducted, which is not proper and in line with our laws. How do we explain, or how do you understand, but how do we explain as well the seeming coincidence that at the time when he's on a toe-to-toe with you legally, and then people start saying things that were never said to you before you had a fight with him? What could be the reason for that?
Well, I think people maybe realize that they might have been afraid to come out until they realize that someone who's not afraid of Matibeti, then they feel free. I had said that the man is closer to Getsemane, one of the taxi bosses in KZN. Getsemane had issues with me. He still has, I believe. He has taken the police to court. He have gone to social media, podcast, and said all sorts of things about me. But I've never had anyone coming to me and say, here's something we have against Getsemane that must lead into a case. So there's no investigation that we have ever lodged against Getsemane, despite of what he had said, of how he has behaved. So this is just to indicate that I'm not going all out to target a person. He's not a person that I target. That's why when I want to talk to him, I'll call him that I want to talk to you, because I don't have issues with him. Despite of how he feels about me and the SAPS, but that's him. So Matibet did the same thing. The fact that there's investigations happening is because evidence now comes before me. Before that, I'm sure people didn't even know me. That's why they didn't raise those things. Because when I looked at how old are these things that they're raising, some of them a couple of years old, and I asked, but why these things were not spoken? They said, no, we're afraid of this man. We thought he's that powerful, he controls everything. Until we see someone that can challenge him. That's why we feel that we must come to you.
You know, General, since for the past 6 months, since we started with the Ad Hoc Committee, and I think with developments at the Nhlanhla Commission of Inquiry, I suppose the country knows a lot now, more than what we knew before then. I'm just saying, during the lifespan of the Ad Hoc Committee, the proceedings here and the proceedings in the Commission of Inquiry, I think people are much more educated about many things that are going on. Of course, some of them are yet to be verified, yet to be confirmed. Some of them might end in court. But I would imagine that to a very large extent, the revelations that have been playing out in the public domain on their own should serve as a deterrent in terms of other police officers or anybody else in society engaging in the wrong activities similar to what we're dealing with. But I just want to know, and of course, more and above that, being a deterrent on its own, the quality of the corrective measures that we should take as Parliament and the Executive should add even a much more important weight in avoiding the recurrence of the same or similar situation in the future. But how much of what we have learned over these proceedings was well known already to somebody like you?
And well, I would say 50-50, but there's quite a lot of things that has come to the fore that I was not aware of as a police officer myself. There's other information that came to me that has not gone to both of these structures that have been established that I became aware of, such as what we spoke about Matibedi as an example. Information of corruption that we start hearing about, that we, otherwise I would have known or would not have known about it. But in the sense of it, then I realize that it's across the board. And the people that are mostly in the forefront of the wrong that's happening, especially outside the police, is involving procurement issues of government. There's a lot of corruption happening in there. The people are coming forward and exposing it. And the unfortunate part is that we have decided that certain level of corruption must only be investigated by the Hawks. So even if I'm aware of it, I must now pass it to the Hawks. And then when you pass it, you don't know what happens from there onward. And that's the only unfortunate part that happens. But by and large, the things are coming up. And we are getting information about things happening in other provinces. And then when you engage people, say, but go to the police station, open a case, and they will tell you, no, this one will go nowhere. And they'll come with some reasons as to why. And it kind of frustrates you. But that makes me realize that there's more problems that we have that otherwise are not known that we must start looking at, that the government must start looking at.
How do you suggest we deal with that, just that concern you have, that now things must be referred to the Hawks? If they are not referred to the Hawks, what else should be done? Because that may also have to do with the kind of legislation that we may have to propose at the end of our work. I'm hearing you saying something pops up and then you must refer it to the Hawks. And I get a sense that you are frustrated by that referral.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of the investigation reforms that need to have, and I'm going to invite you to take the legislation that established IDAC, that's NPA legislation. Look at what you're intending to achieve with it as government. Look at the legislation that amended the functioning of the SAPS in the establishment of the Hawks, and check what is it that the government intending to achieve with it, and then versus the South African Police Service. These are all three levels now established in the country to investigate cases. And how then you separate as a legislator, how do you separate who must do what in all these three investigating arms of our security cluster now? So if legislature takes that, because there's legislation that governs all this, then you go and look at the SOPs then that are developed amongst these three institutions. One of them is how does IDAC take cases, who classify cases between DPCI, who classify cases of DPCI versus the one that are dealt with in the South African Police Service separately, a normal detective service within the SAPS. And what type of case then goes to IDAC versus that which is at DPCI. So when you start looking at that and see whether there is no abuse of the system in between, does each one achieve the objective of creating a safer environment in the Republic without being frustrated by the other one? If the case lands on this one's table, that belongs into other body, how does this case moves over? Is it the senior body that comes and takes it, or is it the junior body that transfers it to the other structures? So what are the rules that are put out there? So I think we might want to investigate the cross-referencing of these three so that we are able to align it properly in terms of legislation. But in the center of all this, you have one police station that must service all the three. In the center of all this, we have one provincial commissioner that constitutionally is overseeing all these operations in the province. To what extent does this provincial commissioner have a say over what IDAC does, over what DPCI does? So those are the gaps that may need to be looked at so that you're able to close them.
I just want to go back to the question I asked earlier on and about the knowledge that you have, and you are saying 50-50 in terms of now looking back now, Commissioner, if the 31st of December did not arrive in the context of the letter from the minister, now looking back, I know it has arrived, but let's imagine it did not. And you know almost 50% or something like that, even if it was 20% of the information that has now been displayed in the public domain. What were you going to do with it, or what were you going to do with it, or what do you think you should have done with it in an event where the 31st of December did not arrive? Not as a date, but in context, as that letter, which has triggered all that has evolved up to the July press conference.
I must indicate that we have been operating, identifying some challenges, but the limitation that we had was to address those internal within the structures. Make recommendation of this, make recommendation of that. It is taken, it's not taken, and you leave it. But you see the problems, but you have a limitation in terms of addressing them. The level of involvement of senior police officers in criminality, it's something that we did not necessarily have any concrete evidence on. We will suspect. That's why I say there are colleagues that have begun to question their lifestyle. But we're not necessarily conducting that lifestyle audit. And I kept on talking about it. You can see that this one looks like he's living large. And we don't know where he gets the money from. But nothing has been done. We therefore couldn't necessarily investigate anything going forward. We'll just leave it like that. But I think the events that took place, that was informed by the letter, has brought into light some of these lifestyles of these generals. Only then you get to realize, oh, this is where this thing comes from. Typical example, I was one of the people invited by Jairus Beer when he got promoted to come and celebrate with him. I declined because we're not friends. And I thought, why must I go and celebrate his promotion? We're not friends, I'm not going there. They went there. Oh Lord, Gerald Kumar was there as well. I don't know if Nhlanhla was there. Probably was there. There were a lot of them that were invited. And subsequently that there would have been other parties. But I don't think at the time anyone thought of anything about Sibia. I must be honest, he was a very flashy guy when he worked for the Hawks before. I was in a task force, and you could observe, every time this heist task force was in the forefront on those heists, I would be there when they come to attend those crime scenes. And he will come there. Very fancy person with fancy suits, you know, like those people that goes to these modern churches. He was always flashy. But I couldn't connect as to what makes him to look like that. So now that we know what we know now, then you then say, but we saw these things back then, but we didn't necessarily dig to establish. So this has assisted us to say, when we suspect something, we then have to start probing. And part of what we then should do is these lifestyle audits that we are complaining about, we have to be very strict about, because maybe they might reveal things while it's still early that will help us going forward. You can't have a person who, like has been already revealed, you are building a R1 million house in one spot. At the same time, you're building another R1 million house somewhere else. Who are you? Where do you get the money from? And you're driving a fancy car. So there are many signs that we might have neglected as management of the police that we saw, that we should have paid attention on. So I feel the way we're doing in terms of complaining, it's all what we could do, but there was limitation on that. Investigate when the information comes before you, but even that investigation doesn't take you far. But that's all we could do at the time.
No, thanks, Chair. I'm left with just two questions now. The last one, I'm going to be following up on your observation that part of the frustration is that things are being raised with the relevant authorities in terms of what needs to be done to deal with problems within the police, and they are not acted upon. I'm going to come back on that issue because there is a matter I want to raise in relation to your boss, the National Commissioner, exactly around that issue. But I want to start with this one, which is, I'm saying, is the one before last. The cartel and the Big Five. Whether they are going to be confirmed at whatever point, who are they, but how do we defeat them? Because these are people that we have to defeat, given what we are told they are engaged on. From what we have heard, there is nothing that they are involved in which has got to do with our national interest. It's more about self-preservation and about their own personal interest, the advancements of those. How do we defeat them? Because at some point, we can't allow a group like that. We've got to find a way to defeat it.
Honourable members, there are a few things that they're involved in. And I feel the other two are something that maybe we might want to do something easy. I don't know about the third one, which might be a bit complicated. The third one, maybe if I must start with it, is the tenders of government. The process of how these tenders are issued and stuff like that is something that government must look at. Once a person is spoiled of always getting tenders every other place where they apply for, and they become rich, it becomes clear that for them getting these tenders is not because of exceptional things that they do that justifies it, but it's the connections they have, or maybe the envelopes that are crossing floors that leads into them getting these tenders. But that's a difficult part to address because it does not only involve the cartel squad, but majority of business people that are involved in tenders. They are benefiting from that or even affected by it. The other two environments that are more of a problem, and the second one in my list of priorities is cash in transit heist. And I would wish government can come up with a policy once and for all that's going to regulate the movements of money in the country. That is going to regulate the cash, the utilization of cash in our country. The lesser we use cash, the better. And I don't want to hear anyone telling me that in the rural areas there's no connectivities. People in the rural areas have got phones. If they can talk on the phone, that means they can pay you on the phone. So I'm not saying totally you can get rid of cash. There's always going to be cash there. Not everyone else has got a bank account. There will be cash. But limit that to the most vulnerable areas where there's not large sum of cash is used. In the urban areas, here where we at in Cape Town, we just have no reason to pay cash in any of the shop in the Mokarong. There's not poor people that stays here. Yes, there are people sleeping on the street, but you and me can afford to pay with a card. So the moment you start introducing that, there's going to be less amount of cash that must be picked up here. A vehicle drives in the morning to come and load up ATMs. A vehicle drives in the morning and come and pick up money from the shops because we bought cash. So they have these in their drop safes. They must give it to these companies to go and bank them. So that's the second part in terms of cash in transit. And one of them, when you regulate the movement, we have suggested some typical examples that if the money is in the bag, that bag is taken from the shop to the car, or the money is in the car and this car is driving from point A to point B, there must be mandatory, at least, devices that are put into that vehicle so that there will be a robber. The moment he interferes with that truck, with that money is destroyed, cannot be used. A lot of things been tried. Ink is put into the paper. They take this paper with the ink, they get chemicals, they dump this money in a bucket overnight. The following day, that chemical is gone. They take the money and go and gamble with it. So if you can't use the money gets destroyed. There won't be need for you to even bomb the car. And explosives is a dangerous thing. So these criminals, they use it recklessly, and they're part of these drug dealers, this cartel, because it's easy money. So they blast these cars with the inside job, because they don't blast an empty car. People within, they will tell them this car's got so much money. Either the companies themselves or the clients where they pick up the money from. They will tell you, we've put so much money into this car, as it moves, get it. And they're going to get it on the road. And that increases the risk to society. It makes our country look like we're at war zone, because there's bombing everywhere on this cash in transit. So the reforms on cash in transit and the use of cash in our country, I think is very urgent, especially on transportation of money, very urgent, something that government must look at. The last one and most important one, our borders. If we don't do anything about the control on the movement of our borders, we're not going to stop these drugs. Regardless of what we do with the cartel, we will not stop the drugs. I said when I presented that it is not only the big five that we have a problem with. They happen to be closer to the government officials, senior government officials, and take control of the entire security cluster. These five. But there's big dogs out there that are sitting and smiling, that are making billions of friends on bringing these drugs into the country and packaging them and reselling them. So until we control our borders, a typical example, police officers we have in the borders, they've been there for ages. The employment condition of a police officer, it's not easy for you to say you are here on a contract for 1 year and after 1 year you must move. We go through all the labor process to try and remove a person after we've placed a person in one spot, because there's no flexibility in terms of our labor laws, employment condition in the police. It must be looked at. It doesn't matter how good I might be about KZN, but the moment I'm so used to the port of entry on Durban and I'm so immense into corruption, whether it's taxis, whether it's CITs, whether it's stock theft, whatever it is, I might need to move from that province and go to another province. Take me and say, now go to Limpopo. You become a provincial commissioner and see you can do what you're doing here as a civil servant. But we don't do that. We become so used to the environment where you're working, and then the criminality then start cropping in, because these criminals either threaten us or they're going to bribe us, either way. So that's what we see happening in the borders. And I must say, it's not only the police in the border. Almost everyone that works there gets involved with the syndicate. From all different departments, different entities in the border, they get involved with syndicates that are working there. So unless we do something about those border controls, we're not going to stop this. So that is the number one priority for me on the borders. Cash in transit, secondly, and the third one, we must start looking at the tenders. That's how we're going to stop this cartel. If we don't do that, you close the borders, they have cash in transit highs. You close that, they still run tenders because they're controlling some of the procurements that are happening, and they still enjoy life.
No, thanks, General. That was important because my own view is that it's not enough to identify the problem. We have to find a way in which we can address the conditions through which they thrive. And I think your suggestions are intended to deal with that. Let me say, General, I think we might have never said this in your first meeting with us here, some of us. But I think I agree with the assertion that that we should applaud you for your courage. And I want you to understand me very well. In this case, applauding you for your courage is not necessarily agreeing with everything you said on that press conference. But the courage to stand up for something that you believe in, articulate it, and be willing to face consequences is what I think you must be applauded for. History will judge and time will judge. As we conclude our work as Ad Hoc Committee as the Commission of Inquiry also concludes its work as to whether there was any value bigger than what you might have observed on the decision you took on that day to stand up and say something is not right and somebody has to do something. Why it's important that that courage is important to be applauded is because, and I'm saying, I'm not dealing with the merits. I'm dealing with because that is how our country was liberated. Some people had to take a decision that no matter what happens to me, but in this case, I am taking a particular position. And of course, if you take a position like the one you took, there are consequences. Like the one they took, those who liberated our country, there were consequences. Others were imprisoned, others died. But there's no way, even today, the country is going to succeed in terms of its development and reconstruction without men and women who are willing to take difficult position. And if it means they die and become martyrs because they acted in the best interest of the country. Now, with that being said, I asked your boss when he was here yesterday. I asked him, and I think I must ask you this question. And I know you might answer this question by saying we don't operate in the same way. And he said that when he was explaining to me that it's Mkhwanazi's way of doing things. I've got my way of doing things. But I asked him this question because at the level where you are, a provincial commissioner, and at the level at where he is, a national commissioner, I think it should be expected, at least by ordinary South Africans, that once you arise to that level, you must be a person that can be depended upon to sacrifice, including himself or herself, for national interest. And I asked this question to General Masemula. If you did not go out in July, was he not going to proceed and implement the directive that he subsequently told us, now that you went out in public, he believed was not in the purview or in the domain or in the authority of the minister? I asked him that question and I said to him, I wanted him to do something that is not easy to do, which is to divorce Fanny Masemula from the National Commissioner. Because a National Commissioner must be a National Commissioner, who may not be exactly Fanny Masemula, in the true sense of what Fanny Masemula is, when he's not the occupants of that particular office. And I asked that question because, and I'm asking it to you now, do you think that he would have acted differently? Do you think that he would have acted differently had you not gone out in July?
Chief Whip, your time is up. May you respond, General. His time is up.
Thank you so much.
But Skosana has also agreed to give me a minute.
Yeah, you're right, Honorable Member, we're not the same. The National Commission is a different person than me. And the truth is, what I'm saying this with respect to my boss, if, from what I'm told, Sbia and Kabinde did not oppose to the proposal, this team will be gone today. Because it seems like there was an agreement reached on the 6th of March with some amendments, but they already agreed that, no, we're going to wind this thing down. So we are shutting down in a way. Had that follow-up meeting that was held in Pretoria concluded, they would have signed that deal without Mkhwanazi knowing. And they were going to implement it. I'm saying this with that respect, that it was Nkabinde's behavior and Sibia's behavior that led into the minister to say, I'm no longer going to have this meeting anymore. I think that kind of stalled everything. When I look at, after the arrest of the members of crime intelligence that were responsible for the counter-intelligence investigation that was happening in Gauteng, Members are kept in safe houses. They are operating with resources from intelligence. This management of intelligence is arrested, and they are told not to enter facilities of crime intelligence. I fly to Pretoria, and I challenge management the second day after they were released that the bail condition does not say they must not work. It says they must not enter the premises. They can still do this job elsewhere. The management disagreed with me. They said they must not. So they did not. Departmental investigation was conducted. They were cleared. After they were cleared, they were still barred from doing the work. There were meetings after meetings after meetings. I had to again travel to Pretoria and sit with my boss and say, let us be serious now. Do we want to kill this investigation yourself? Or you want these members to investigate? So you must decide, then the boss. It was that day when he eventually signed the letters that reinstate these members to do the work. I didn't travel back. Then the members that are doing the job started getting support. For the good almost 5 months, they were not getting support. So there was no energy coming from the management to make sure that these junior members that are doing the work, they continue with their job. I had to again go from KZN to make that done, to make that happen. We were talking here, it still pains me today, that despite of the sacrifice that these members have made over time, the commitment from the boss to say, we're going to acknowledge these members of PKTT for the work they've done, the president applauding these members. They are in the line of receiving awards. They are invited, they start buying suits and stuff like that. On the day after this letter is written, a decision is taken by management, my boss, that they are no longer getting anything because he doesn't want to upset the minister. To date, they have never received in a single paper a certificate that says, thank you for what you've done. To date, those members are sitting with sore hearts. To date. And I could see this pain in their faces. Fast forward to the GCI ops that uncovered all this corruption in Gauteng. To date, they remain in those junior ranks without any form of recognition, a certificate to say, come here, thank you, medal of bravery, we appreciate. We have not done that today as an organization. I don't have authority over that. But again, the boss sees it in his own way. If it was me in his position, I've dealt with it differently. So when I assess all this behavior that has happened in management in the organization, it tells me that the shutting down of the PKTT was going to happen had the agreement been reached on the proposal. If Khumalo had proposed in his own way, maybe they would have gone with this one. He proposed in this fashion of winding it down, and the document that was submitted, presented, they would have implemented it. The reason why I did not even make it public, because I was still not 100% sure whether my boss will back me up. That's why when he said, no, you can do this press briefing, I said, I want to do this press briefing about the PKTT, where people are going to ask me things. But part of the problem of this briefing are the doctors that are sitting in Pretoria. Did you allow them to go there or not? He says, no, no. I said a statement. So for me to update on the
Thank you
PKTT
so much. Thank you so much.
was
General.
that.
Thank you so much.
Sorry? Hey,
Thank you so much.
siyeke lapho.
Skhosana, Honorable Skhosana.
School wait. How's that school wait? Dankie. Sizokuhlala la namhlanje siyindawo. Yalala la. Shamasi,
Shoneshwa.
the time is 23:37. I'll be finishing at what time, Che? 15 after 12.
0020.
15, sorry. I'm not counting the other benevolent, Chair. I'm not counting the 15 minutes in case I need an extra time.
Yeah, it's 12, it's a 00 hour 13.
0013, okay. Thank you, Chair. Chairman, ngiyakuthokoza.
Intonation.
Ngesikhethu ngizokubetha ngisindebele nesizulu. Ngesikhethu sithi uyikakaramba, uyikutane. Ngesizulu bathi uyinkunzi, uyisikhokho. Ngifuna ukuthi nje kuwena into yenzileko irare iphasi mazombe. Mangithi irare iphasi mazombe ngesizulu kuthiwa iyenze umhlaba uthuke into enye engaziwako eSouth Africa neAfrica mazombe. Ngicabanga ukuthi namanye amazwe abomakhelwane abala iduzane bayabafuna abantu abanesibindi esifana naleso naso. Ngithi abantu emakhaya njengoba ngikhuluma nawe nje ngalesikhathi ebusuku kangaka bathokoza into oyenzileko, whether into ositshele yona ngezi-6 zangoJuly, ngoba thina njengekomiti yamapolisa ngezi-5 zangoMarch weza wazokupresenta, azange sayithathele ehloko ni. Ngamanye amagama ngifuna ukuphakamisa isandla ukuthi chebe senza mhlambe saphosisa. Baza ngixolela abanye ngoba ngitshelwe ukuthi ama-interpreter akekho akhambela ukulala. Akulalwa la, siyabereka thina la. Siyabereka la. No. Ngizoyibamba nje ngelimi lesiyeni. Ngizokuthoma ngithi in the year 2024 wathola you received the request from Gauteng Organized Crime Investigation Unit ukuthi bakusize ubasize to assist them with investigation to dismantle the organized crime syndicate operating in the country and controlled in Gauteng province. General Khumalo came here. He was very clear to say whether the percentage we might not agree that Ampura Mapolisa Sanao Gauteng in particular. He said most of the police, I don't want to use the word corruption, they are not doing their work.
Yeah, there's a serious problem that we have in Gauteng especially.
In Gauteng in particular. Now, you took the decision to deploy 10 of your members for this political killing task team to support Gauteng Organized Crime Unit, am I right?
That's correct.
Now, this investigation has unmasked the syndicate which involves politicians, law enforcement agents like SAPS, Metro, correctional services, prosecutors, judiciary, and controlled by drug cartel as well as business people. Do you still stand by those words?
That's correct.
Now, I think we let the country down when it comes to the issue, in particular of these correctional service matters, which we are going to traverse on that at a later stage, because you submitted to us the issue of Germany Prim, am I right?
That's correct.
But I want to start with this PKTT issue because the president as well has responded. And the president agrees with you and the National Commissioner. I'm going to go to that, but I want us to finish this first. In your belief, because we had some prosecutors here, whether they were suspended, some have left, because of the issues of this, the law allows that. You've got IDAC, which is intimidating people. And I'm still going to repeat that again. There's an allegation that is an Indian cabal in IDAC there's I think, I'm going to repeat that, Perumal, Sunesh, Belochone, or whatever the surname is. I might be wrong, I'm sorry on that. And I think, yeah, it's Perumal, Sulen Penesh, and Padiache, if I remember well. Are those the one who arrested the team of General Khumalo?
Well, I think there's two of them, of the names that you mentioned, that were part of the arrest.
The other one, there was an allegation, you know, which with the case number, I guess, which was they submitted to us, that one of those investigation officers has a minor rape case, but is still working. And Chetty came here last week, he claimed that as well, that the mother of the victim is crying, that there's no law in this country. You might not know about that, but I'm saying that was the evidence given to us, and information, let me not say in evidence, that's the information we got from here. In short, I know that the IDAC, they've got all the powers. They can arrest, prosecute, which for me, as lawmakers, we need to look at that. I don't think it's correct to have a referee and a player. What's your take on that?
Well, when the government took a decision to reestablish IDAC, we began to ask ourselves a question: why did the government shut down Scorpions? Because what government has literally done is to resuscitate or reestablish Scorpion with a different name. And it still remains a question to date.
Yeah. Now,
and a matter of fact, to add on it, honorable member, the former head of TPCI, Gerald De Beer, he questioned that if you give IDAC the prosecution powers, why don't you give TPCI the same thing? So it remains a question. You shut down one unit, you re-establish it with the same mandate, but with a different name.
Yeah. Now, let's come to the issue, because when you were here, when we started, there was the issue of Brown Mkhwanazi sending a WhatsApp message to you regarding the allegation on the defeating the end of justice, which were publicized and which involved the Department of Correctional Service at Mpangeni in KwaZulu-Natal. Mr. Brown Mkhwanazi is also sent a screenshot of a presentation that was made on the 30th of September 2024, titled 2024-2025 Division Crime Intelligence Policy to you. Now, I just want to say to you that the second of events here, where I'm leading you to, the Brown Mkhwanazi I'm talking about, the minister in parliament denied knowing him. However, the minister confirmed that he knows Brown Mkhwanazi during a telephone conversation which was posted by Ed Londi Care at 3:30, where he confirmed that this was his comrade from the Northwest Province. Now, the association between Mkhwanazi, because I want us to clear this matter. In your view, the minister misled us by saying he doesn't know Mkhwanazi, and later stage he agreed that he knows Mr. Mkhwanazi.
Well, I believe that because it's on record. I don't know what you said.
So in a simple term, he lied. Now, the president has responded. In his response to our question, because we asked him to appear before the committee, but unfortunately, is not appearing to this committee, but he has responded. In his response, I'm going to take you along on that, which I think you are a bit vindicated, Shamaza, on this matter. You are vindicated. The president here we sent question to the president, and the president responded simply and, in one sentence. It's not complicated. The question was, did the president approve or support the decision to disband PKTT? And the reason provided by Minister Mkhwanazi to disband the PKTT, the president, in his response, he says, I did not approve of the decision. And kindly see my answer above, question 25-26 on page 10. And I will read that as well. Now, Minister Mkhwanazi's decision to disband the PKTT, in the respective statement, both the National Commissioner General Masemula and the minister indicated that the president was informed of the decision to disband the PKTT. We said he must confirm the date, whether the president was informed of the decision and the date. Now, simply, the president came back to us. He said to us, I'm going to read that before we transverse on the matter which you presented to us as well today. I was informed by the National Commissioner of Police that he has been instructed by the Minister of Police, then Minister Mkhwanazi, to disband the PKTT. He made it clear that he disagreed with the decision. He furthermore assured the president that notwithstanding this instruction, a disbandment could not be effected immediately, as this will negatively affect the pending investigation. On receiving this information, I asked to meet with the minister. I met the minister on about 13 February. And remember that the PKTT, the letter from the minister, it disbanded the PKTT on the 1st of on the 31st. Whilst we were enjoying, the last day, but the president only met him on the 13th. On that meeting, the minister informed the president that he has given instruction to disband the task scheme, and his reason for doing so. I convey my dissatisfaction and not having been consulted prior to the decision being taken. I furthermore indicated that, in my view, this was a decision for the National Commissioner to make. I made it clear my desire to keep abreast of any further decision that will impact the work to be done in relation to the political killings. It was in my understanding that the steps to be taken fell within the purview of the National Commissioner's authority. I had understood from the National Commissioner that the PKTT will not be disbanded and this work will continue. The directive notwithstanding, and I expected to be brief and has been in a normal course in the previous years on any political killing cases, arrest or prosecution going forward. Now, hence I'm saying to you, you are vindicated on this matter. The Minister Mkhwanazi was completely wrong. The president, when he established IMC, he said not even a single minister will have taken a decision to disband that alone, because it didn't belong to one department. There was ministers, and there's no handover like, in the administration. If there's a new administration, the status quo remain. So I want to say to you, General, that there's nothing wrong which we have done on this matter. Hence, we are saying whatever you said on the 6th of July, maybe some other issues, as you said yourself. There's no one who's perfect. you might, the information which you had might not be correct, but hence we are here again to correct what you think perhaps when you came here for the first time, you were a bit misled by people who gave you information. But what I'm getting here as well, in terms of this PKTT, which has made us to be here, you were spot on. Now, let's come to the issue now, General. You brought in a statement here about which you said, Honorable Member Nhlanhla, who's here, fortunately, the father, I think when you explained that, how did you get this message? This message from one prisoner called Jemani Prim.
It's a cousin of mine that brought it to me.
Or your cousin brought it to you?
Yeah, I believe because he was with someone. I'm not sure whether that's a gentleman that picked it up from the prison. I cannot remember. But it's my cousin that was communicating with.
Are you comfortable to traverse on this matter?
Very much so.
Thank you. This morning you said you read the statement and then further confirmed that you verified the information in the written statement which you confirm are true and correct. Am I right?
I said I read the statement, and majority of the things that came out of this statement, they collaborate to the things that was already been presented before this committee and the Nhlanhla Commission.
And in the Nhlanhla Commission. If so, does mean that when he says in paragraph 7 that Honorable Gayton McKenzie made sure that he's put in CMEX because he has a voice recording which links Honorable Gayton with drug dealers and drug money. That's paragraph 7.
Yes, Honorable Member, my reading and understanding on this, if I may, almost all the paragraphs is narrating the stories of what he was told by Ket Nhlanhla. But on paragraph 7 only, he's then expressing his own frustration. So the people he talks about on this paragraph is him telling Ket Nhlanhla. That's when then the minister's name and other names are coming in. But the rest of the statement is what Nhlanhla told him. What is relevant to me in the main was the statement that the minister brought here that came from prison, how it was obtained. That was the main thing. Of course, majority of the things that are written here, they are worrying. They need to be looked at. And some of things that he mentions here are things that has happened, like the meeting at Nhlanhla between me and him. He's the one who was telling this guy. This guy would not have known about that meeting. Surely, I had no reason not to trust most of the things that he said.
Let me make a disclaimer, Chair, as well, that I've received a call from 011942 and whatever name. The guy called himself the same Prim. He says it's a public phone. I ignored the call 3 times because we have to protect the integrity of this parliament. If there's allegation as strong as what you submitted here, because that statement, they've sent that statement to the Honorable Taibosh and Honorable Nhlanhla, and I deposited that affidavit here in this core committee. Unfortunately, because of time, this is our last day. But I'm going to ask you, in your view of what you have read, whether it's true or not true, it will be tested because we are here to probe the truth. In the light of this revelation by Jemani in the letter to Nhlanhla, that an ad hoc committee should have called Jemani to testify before this committee, and that the people mentioned have perhaps been given a chance to answer for themselves. What's your view on that? Especially when it involves an executive in the cabinet, because the name Honorable Minister Gayton McKenzie is a minister. What's your view on that?
Well, when this whole commission was announced, both the Nhlanhla and I believe the Ad Hoc Committee, Minister Gayton McKenzie was one of the vocal ones who said he's going to testify. about the things he knows, which seems to suggest, and there's a record out of his own mouth, which made me believe that he knows things that perhaps might also assist that are related to what we are raising, which is drug related. So when his name comes like this and he has not testified, it might perhaps leave a question mark as to what does he know that could assist with what we are talking about. So when this man mentioned his name, perhaps it might be a different investigation altogether that might need to be investigated.
Maybe perhaps it's us who have made that mistake. I'm not sure whether it's us or the people who were receiving these submissions. Maybe never submitted anything, but perhaps, as you said, he mentioned himself that he wanted to come. Yeah, but I think Nhlanhla Commission is got an extension. Maybe it's the right place to do, because this is our last day in general. Because, in paragraph 8 as well, I'm going to ask about it. There's a name mentioned, KT Mulife, that is up